It started on an ordinary Tuesday. I remember the day vividly. It was one of those dreary afternoons where the world outside was washed in gray, and the sound of rain tapping against the window became a constant background hum. I had no idea then that my entire world would be turned upside down in a matter of hours. I had been married to Vanessa for 3 years. We didn't have that perfect relationship everyone dreams of, no couple does. But we had something solid, built on a foundation of mutual respect and a lot of love. I thought we had something unshakable. But that afternoon, everything changed. It started with a strange message. It wasn't from her, but from a number I didn't recognize. I wasn't the kind of person to snoop, but this message felt like it was meant for me to see. It was short, cryptic, and left my mind racing. The ring is going to be with the bartender. She'll need it back when she comes back with him. I was confused at first. I had no idea what the message meant or who would send something like that. My immediate thought was that it was a prank. But there was an eerie feeling in my gut that told me this wasn't just some random joke. It felt personal, like someone was trying to tell me something or warn me. Vanessa had been out of town for work the night before, a last-minute business trip, so I didn't think much of it. She often went on these short trips, and it was usually nothing to be concerned about. I decided to ignore the message at first, chalking it up to someone messing with me. But that gnawing feeling kept coming back. I decided to follow up on the message, not because I wanted to spy on her, but because I needed to know what was happening. I sent Vanessa a quick text asking about her plans for the evening, not wanting to sound suspicious, but wanting some peace of mind. Her reply was quick and casual, just as I expected. Out with some friends from work. Be back later. Don't wait up. But then my phone buzzed again. Another message from the same unknown number, this time with a photo attached. I hesitated before opening it, but my curiosity won out. The photo was of Vanessa, unmistakably her, sitting at a bar. She was smiling, laughing, looking carefree, but the thing that caught my attention, the thing that made my heart drop, was the man sitting next to her. He wasn't someone I recognized. I zoomed in on the photo, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. There was something about the way they were positioned, close, too close. His hand was resting on her shoulder, and she didn't seem uncomfortable with it. In fact, she looked completely at ease, more so than she had in weeks. I felt my chest tighten. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe I was reading too much into it. But then, the message followed. She's with him right now. The ring is with the bartender. She won't notice. I didn't know what to make of it. Was this some kind of cruel joke? Or was this the beginning of something much worse? I stood there, staring at the photo for what felt like hours, the quiet hum of the world outside becoming deafening in my ears. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just sit there and wait for answers to come to me. I had to see it for myself. I got in the car, heart racing, mind spinning, not knowing what to expect, but feeling that I had already crossed a point of no return. The bar wasn't far from our apartment, so I drove there, each minute of the drive feeling like it was stretching out for an eternity. When I got there, I sat in the parking lot for a while, trying to calm my nerves. I told myself I wasn't being irrational, that I was just trying to make sense of things. But deep down, I knew that something had changed. I could feel it in my bones. I walked into the bar, hoping to blend in, to figure out what was going on without causing a scene. The place was dimly lit, crowded with a mix of people talking, laughing, and drinking. I scanned the room quickly, trying to spot her. And then I saw them. Vanessa and the man from the photo, sitting at the bar, talking in low voices, their faces inches apart. He was leaning in too close. Too familiar. I couldn't help but feel my stomach churn. But it wasn't just jealousy that gnawed at me. There was something deeper, something I couldn't explain. I had never seen her look like this before. It was as if she was a completely different person. Then, just as I was about to turn around and leave, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Vanessa reached for her purse, and the man slipped something into her hand. It was a small object, and in the dim light, I could barely make out what it was. But then I saw the glint of something shiny, a ring. Her ring. My heart sank. I didn't know how long I stood there, watching them, but my feet were suddenly frozen to the floor. The message from earlier echoed in my mind. The ring is going to be with the bartender. She'll need it back when she comes back with him. It hit me all at once. The ring. It wasn't just a coincidence. Someone had deliberately told me about it. Someone knew what was happening. But who? And why? As Vanessa stood up to leave with the man, I felt a strange mix of rage, hurt, and disbelief. I had to know what this was. I had to know what was going on, even if the answers tore everything apart. I walked up to the bar, trying to steady my breathing, trying to act normal. But my mind was racing. I knew that when Vanessa came back, everything would change. I stood there at the edge of the bar, feeling like an intruder in my own life. My eyes were locked on Vanessa, but I couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. She was laughing with the man, a laugh I hadn't heard in a long time. It wasn't the kind of laugh I was used to hearing, the one that was filled with warmth and comfort. No, this was different. It was the kind of laugh that made my skin crawl. I tried to take a deep breath, but it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I watched as the man leaned in just a bit closer to her, their faces inches apart. It wasn't anything overt, no public display of affection, but there was a subtle familiarity between them, something that shouldn't have existed. They weren't talking like two colleagues catching up. They were talking like two people who had known each other far longer than they were willing to admit. It felt like I was watching a secret unfold, and I was the last to know. But it wasn't just that. The ring. The ring was the thing that made everything fall into place. As I saw her grab it from the bartender's hand and slip it into her purse, I felt my heart drop into my stomach. It wasn't just a coincidence. That's when it all clicked. The messages, the photos, the strange feeling I had been trying to shake off. Everything had led me to this moment. I felt like a fool standing there, frozen, trying to make sense of what was happening. But I couldn't look away. There was no turning back now. I had to find out who this man was, and why he was so close to my wife. I wasn't sure what to do next. Confront her right here, in front of everyone? No, I couldn't do that. I wasn't sure if I could trust myself in that moment. The anger that was boiling inside me was overwhelming, and I needed to control it before things went completely out of hand. I took a few steps back, trying to regain some composure. I needed a plan. I needed to think. My eyes stayed on them as they stood up and walked toward the exit. Vanessa still laughing, the man talking to her in a low voice. It was clear they were leaving together. I watched them walk out of the bar, and I felt the last thread of my control snap. I couldn't just let this go. I had to know what was really happening. I had to follow them. I waited a moment before slipping out of the bar and heading to my car. The rain had started to fall heavier, the streets slick and wet beneath my tires. My heart was pounding, but I didn't care. I followed them at a distance, keeping my headlights off, hoping to remain unnoticed. They didn't go far, just a few blocks down the street to a small, quiet hotel. My stomach turned as they walked inside, and I pulled into a parking spot across the street. I watched as the two of them entered the building, Vanessa still with that careless smile on her face. She didn't look like a woman who was supposed to be married. She didn't look like a woman who had just been laughing with her husband's worst fear. A man who wasn't just a coworker, but someone who had been invited into her personal space, into our lives, in ways I couldn't understand. I sat in my car for what felt like an eternity, watching the hotel. What was I doing? Was I stalking them? Was I just a paranoid fool? The questions ran through my head, but one thought kept pushing them all away. I had to know the truth. I finally decided to do something I would have never considered just hours ago. I wasn't going to stand here, waiting and wondering. I needed to confront her, to hear it from her own lips. The truth. No more games, no more waiting. I would go inside. But as I walked toward the hotel, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, my heart racing as I saw another message from the unknown number. It read, "She's inside. The bartender's ring is with her now. Don't forget what you saw." I froze in my tracks. It was almost like the message had been sent at the exact moment I decided to confront them. My hand shook as I read the words again, trying to make sense of them. What did it all mean? Who was behind this? And how did they know so much about my wife? I couldn't wait any longer. I pushed the thoughts out of my mind and headed for the hotel. As I walked inside, I was hyper-aware of every sound, every movement. The lobby was quiet, the kind of place you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for something specific. I glanced around, but there was no sign of Vanessa or the man. I had to find them. I made my way to the elevator, my fingers trembling as I pressed the button for the second floor. The silence was deafening, and my mind was spinning with thoughts I didn't want to face. As the elevator door slid open, I stepped out into the hallway and looked around. I could feel my pulse in my ears, but there was no going back now. I walked slowly down the hallway, stopping at the door closest to me. I didn't know what I was going to say. I didn't know what kind of reaction I was expecting. But as I stood there, listening to the muffled sounds from inside, I knew that everything I thought I knew about my wife was about to be turned upside down. And then, I heard it. The unmistakable sound of laughter. The same laughter from the bar. Only this time, it wasn't just the sound of two people talking. It was different. The sound of something more intimate. Something I wasn't meant to hear. I took a deep breath, my hand hovering over the door. Should I knock? Should I walk away? My mind was racing, but I couldn't turn back now. Not after everything I had seen. I opened the door. The truth was about to unfold before me, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to face it. The door swung open with a soft creak, and for a moment, I stood there in complete silence, as if the world itself had come to a halt. My heart was pounding in my chest, the sound almost deafening in my ears. The hallway was quiet, save for the faint laughter I had heard moments ago. But now it was louder, almost more distinct. My body froze. It was as if my mind had no control over my own actions. I was standing at the precipice of something I wasn't sure I could handle. I was about to confront the very person I trusted the most, and everything inside me told me that I was no longer ready for this. But I couldn't turn back. I had to face whatever was behind that door. My feet moved on their own, slowly, almost reluctantly, as I crept inside the room. What I saw in that split second changed everything. Vanessa was sitting on the bed, her back to me. The man I had seen her with earlier was standing near the window, his back to her. They were talking quietly, but the moment I entered, the conversation stopped abruptly. The sudden silence was deafening. I felt my body tense up, every muscle in me locking in place. Vanessa turned around first, her eyes wide with shock. Her lips parted as though she wanted to say something, but no words came out. She looked caught. For the first time in our entire relationship, she looked guilty. The man turned to face me, a flicker of recognition passing across his face. He didn't look surprised, almost as if he'd expected me. His eyes narrowed, as though he had been waiting for this moment. For a brief second, I considered walking away. The weight of what I was about to do, the potential destruction of my marriage, the possibility of shattering everything, it was all too much. But I had already come this far, and I couldn't leave without the answers I so desperately needed. What is this? My voice was shaky, quieter than I had intended, but it held an edge I couldn't conceal. I was shaking from head to toe, not because of fear, but because of the anger that was suddenly bubbling to the surface. Vanessa stood up quickly, but she didn't approach me. She remained on the other side of the room, her hands trembling as she folded them in front of her. I can explain, she started, but her voice wavered. It was as though she knew that no explanation could make sense of what I had just walked in on. I could feel the confusion in her eyes. And yet, there was something else, something more than just guilt. I couldn't pinpoint it, but it made my stomach twist. I didn't want to hear her explanation. I didn't need to hear her words, the rehearsed defense she would give me. I had seen enough. The photo, the messages, the man standing there, the look in her eyes, it all told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't just a simple case of a friendly drink after work. No, this was something far worse. I turned to the man, who had remained oddly quiet, watching us like a spectator to some tragic play. Who are you? I demanded. The words came out more like a growl than a question. He didn't seem fazed by my anger, or by the fact that I had just walked in on them. He looked at me with a calm, almost amused expression. It was as though my confrontation was just another part of his plan. I'm David, he said, his voice smooth, almost too calm for the situation. We've met before, at the office. I didn't care about the office. I didn't care who he was, or where we had met. All I cared about was the betrayal I was staring at, the betrayal that had been right in front of me the entire time. I clenched my fists, my mind screaming with questions, but none of them felt like they would ever be enough to justify what I had just uncovered. Why? I managed to choke out, the pain in my chest almost unbearable. Why her? Why my wife? David didn't seem startled by my accusation. He didn't even flinch. Instead, he took a step closer to Vanessa, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. The gesture was so intimate, so natural, that it made my blood boil. The way she didn't pull away from him made it clear that this wasn't a first-time thing. This wasn't a mistake. This was something planned. Something real. Look, man, David started, his voice dismissive. This isn't what you think. But I could see the lie behind his words. I saw it in the way he looked at Vanessa, the way she looked back at him, like they were both caught in some unspoken understanding. I turned back to Vanessa, my gaze hardening. She had stayed silent until now, her head down, eyes glued to the floor, as if she couldn't bring herself to meet my gaze. "Vanessa," I said, forcing her name out with a tight breath. "What is going on? Is this what you want? Is this the life you wanted?" She looked up at me then, her eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and something else. I couldn't quite place it. But before she could respond, I felt a surge of frustration that overtook any attempt at reason. "Answer me," I demanded. "Is this why you've been acting different? Is this why you've been lying to me?" Vanessa didn't speak for a long moment. The silence in the room was suffocating. But when she finally looked up, her eyes met mine, and I saw something I didn't expect. Regret. Deep regret, mixed with a sorrow so raw it nearly broke me. She opened her mouth to speak, but instead, her words caught in her throat. "I didn't want this. I didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered, her voice shaking with emotion. I didn't know how to stop it. The weight of her words hit me harder than I could have imagined. I had been angry, frustrated, confused, but hearing her admit that she had been trapped by something she couldn't control felt like the earth shifting beneath my feet. But I wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. Not after everything. "I'm done," I said, my voice low, cold. I couldn't even recognize the person who had just spoken. "I can't do this anymore." And as I turned to leave, I realized that the truth wasn't something I was ever prepared to handle. The pain of knowing was worse than any lie I could have imagined. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I trusted, was now a stranger to me. And it was too late to go back. I left the hotel room without looking back. The door slammed behind me, and for a brief moment, I felt like the world outside had collapsed. My mind was in a haze, still trying to process what had just unfolded. Vanessa, the woman I thought I knew inside and out, was standing there, her heart exposed, her secrets laid bare. The man, David, had no words to offer other than lies that barely masked the truth. And all of it felt like an elaborate, cruel game, one that I had never signed up for. As I walked down the hallway, I could hear their muffled voices through the walls, but I didn't care to listen. What could they possibly say that would change anything now? The room that once felt so familiar, where we had shared countless nights, now felt like a foreign land, a place I had no right to enter anymore. I stumbled out of the hotel and into the cold night air, my breath coming in short bursts. I didn't know where I was going or what I was doing, but I had to get away. I couldn't think clearly, couldn't make sense of all the emotions swirling inside me. Anger, betrayal, confusion, they were all so loud, so overpowering. I drove aimlessly, the windshield wipers slicing through the rain, the sound of tires on wet pavement almost hypnotic. My mind kept replaying the image of Vanessa and David, the way she had looked at him, the way her hand had rested on his arm, the way she had been so lost in him, so unaware of everything else around her. The woman I had trusted with my entire world had been slipping away, and I had never even seen it coming. I eventually parked on the side of a quiet street, my car idling, and sat there for what felt like hours. The rain had slowed to a light drizzle, and the city around me was muted, as if it were holding its breath. I had no idea what to do next. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. Should I be angry? Should I be sad? Was there any way to fix what had just been broken? Or had it been broken for a long time, and I had just refused to see it? I tried to call Vanessa. I needed to hear her side of the story. But when the phone rang, I realized I didn't want to hear excuses. I didn't want to hear her tell me how much she regretted it, or how complicated things were. I wanted the truth. The raw, unfiltered truth. But would I even get that from her? The phone rang again, and this time, I hit the end call button before it could connect. I couldn't do it. I couldn't talk to her. Not yet. Not when I was this broken, when everything I had built my life around was crumbling into dust. I sat there, staring at the dark street in front of me. The weight of everything was too much. I was losing the woman I loved, and I had no idea how to stop it. All the signs had been there, all along. The late nights at work, the quiet, subtle distance between us. The little things I should have noticed. But I had ignored them, convinced that everything was fine. Now, I was paying the price for my blindness. Eventually, I drove back to our apartment. I had no idea what I would say to Vanessa when I walked through that door. Part of me wanted to confront her again, to demand answers, to make her understand the pain I was feeling. But another part of me just wanted to get out of this nightmare. I was caught between two conflicting desires. the need for closure, and the urge to escape from the mess altogether. When I entered the apartment, it felt empty. Vanessa wasn't home. I wasn't sure if that was a relief or a curse. I had expected her to be here, to have stayed, waiting for me to return so we could talk. But the silence was deafening. I stood there in the doorway for a few moments, unsure of what to do. The apartment, which had once been a symbol of our life together, now felt like a prison. Every corner, every room, held the memories of happier times, times that now felt so far away. I grabbed my phone and, almost instinctively, checked for messages. There was nothing. No apology. No explanation. Not even an attempt to reach out. It was as though she had disappeared. The only message I had received was the one from earlier, the cryptic text that had set everything in motion. The one that had led me down this twisted path. I opened the message again, rereading it, hoping that somehow I had missed something, some hint, some clue. But there was nothing new. The same words, haunting and cold, stared back at me. She's inside. The bartender's ring is with her now. Don't forget what you saw. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being played, like a puppet in someone else's game. But who was pulling the strings? Who had sent me those messages, and why? I didn't trust anyone anymore. I didn't even trust myself. The next few hours felt like a blur. I didn't know what to do with myself. I considered calling a friend, asking for advice, but I realized that no one could help me. No one could undo what had been done. No one could fix the pieces of my shattered trust. The only person who could do that was Vanessa, but I didn't know if I could ever trust her again. How could I? After everything I had seen? After everything I had learned? As the night stretched on, I found myself staring at the empty space across from me on the couch, imagining Vanessa sitting there, pretending like nothing had happened. But I knew the truth now, and there was no going back. I felt like I was losing my mind, caught in this endless loop of anger, betrayal, and confusion. The truth was staring me in the face, but I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know how to move forward. And then, just as I was about to collapse into the despair of it all, my phone buzzed again. It was a new message. This one wasn't from Vanessa. This time, it was from the same unknown number. And it said, "You're getting closer to the truth. Don't give up now." My blood ran cold. Who was doing this to me? And why? I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't done. I wasn't going to let this go. The truth was out there, and I was going to find it. The message on my phone lingered, its words searing into my brain. You're getting closer to the truth. Don't give up now. I stared at the screen, a sense of dread washing over me. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to ignore it, to let it go, to leave this whole mess behind. But I couldn't. I couldn't shake the feeling that this cryptic sender knew something I didn't. Something that would unravel the last shred of my life and expose the truth once and for all. Who was this person? Why were they doing this? And what did they mean by closer to the truth? Was there more I hadn't uncovered yet? Had Vanessa been lying to me for longer than I thought? Or was it someone else? Someone orchestrating this nightmare from the shadows? The phone in my hand felt heavier, and I dropped it onto the couch, unable to keep looking at it. My mind was swirling with questions, each one more pressing than the last. My whole world had become one giant puzzle, and I had no idea how to piece it together. The more I tried to understand, the more complicated it became. There were too many layers to this, secrets within secrets, betrayal upon betrayal. But who was behind it all? The rain had stopped, and the night outside was still. The city hummed with life, but in the confines of my apartment, everything felt suffocating. I couldn't stay here, not with these thoughts crowding my head. I grabbed my coat and left, stepping out into the crisp night air. It was a strange kind of cold, the kind that made everything feel distant, like the world had drawn away from me, leaving me standing alone in the darkness. I needed to clear my mind, and the only way to do that was to keep moving. I drove aimlessly for hours, not really caring where I went, just needing to be somewhere far from the chaos of the apartment, from the unanswered questions, from the overwhelming ache in my chest. The streets of the city blurred by, the headlights of passing cars creating streaks of light in my vision. I wasn't even sure where I was headed, but I felt like I had to keep going. After a while, I ended up on the outskirts of town, near an old park we used to visit together. Vanessa and I had spent many evenings there, walking around the quiet paths, talking about our dreams and our future. Back then, everything had seemed so simple, so perfect. But now, that place felt like a graveyard of our memories. each tree, each bench, a reminder of the lies that had slowly destroyed everything. I parked the car near the entrance and stepped out, feeling the cold wind bite at my skin. I pulled the collar of my coat up and walked into the park, letting my thoughts drift. The eerie silence of the place matched the turmoil inside me. The only sound was the crunch of leaves beneath my feet and the occasional rustle of branches in the wind. It felt like the calm before a storm, like everything was about to change, but I didn't know how. I walked along the path, lost in my thoughts, until I heard something that made my heart stop. Footsteps. Quiet, deliberate steps, approaching from behind. I turned quickly, but there was no one there. Just the empty park, the darkness pressing in from all sides. I shook my head, chalking it up to paranoia. But then I heard it again, closer this time. A voice, faint and familiar, cutting through the silence. "You're still looking, aren't you?" I froze, the blood draining from my face. My heart hammered in my chest. I spun around, scanning the shadows, but there was no one in sight. The voice, though, it had come from behind me, and it sounded like it was right there. I stepped back, my senses on high alert. Who was this? Why was I being followed? Was this person the same one who had been sending me those messages? The ones that had twisted everything into chaos? The voice came again, but this time, it was closer, almost like a whisper in my ear. "You're getting too close, but you're still not seeing the whole picture. Keep going, and you'll regret it." I turned quickly, ready to confront whoever it was. But once again, the park was empty. No one was there. The feeling of being watched lingered, though, and it made my skin crawl. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to leave, but I couldn't. Not yet. I turned back toward the path, trying to steady my breathing. I had to find answers. I had to know what had happened, what Vanessa had done. But now, I wasn't just chasing after the truth of her betrayal. I was chasing something far more dangerous, someone who knew too much about me, someone who had been orchestrating everything from the shadows. My mind raced as I walked back to my car. Every sound seemed to echo in the darkness, and every step I took felt like I was getting closer to something I couldn't quite grasp. This wasn't just about Vanessa anymore. It wasn't just about her affair. It was about something much bigger. There was a hidden hand pulling the strings, and I had no idea who was behind it. I got into my car, my hands shaking as I started the engine. As I drove back through the dark streets, I kept thinking about the voice. The warning. "You'll regret it." It had sounded so real, so alive. But what did it mean? Who was this person, and why were they trying to control everything? As I turned onto the main road, my phone buzzed again. My stomach dropped. I wasn't sure I was ready for another message, but I reached for it, my fingers trembling. This time, it was different. The message didn't come from the unknown number. It came from a name I recognized. "Vanessa, I'm sorry. I can't keep this from you anymore. Meet me tomorrow. I'll explain everything." I felt my heart rate spike. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for, the truth. Or so I thought. I didn't know what to believe anymore. But I knew one thing for certain. I was deep in this now, and there was no turning back. I had to meet her. I had to hear her side of the story. But something inside me whispered that I might not like the answers. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. The weight of the message from Vanessa hung over me, the words echoing in my mind. "I'm sorry. I can't keep this from you anymore. Meet me tomorrow. I'll explain everything." I had read it over and over again, wondering what everything meant. What was she going to tell me? Was this going to be another one of her half-hearted apologies, an attempt to justify the impossible? Or was it something deeper, something darker? The minutes felt like hours as I sat in the dark, staring at the screen of my phone, the silence of my apartment pressing in on me. The rain from earlier had stopped, but the clouds remained, heavy and suffocating. I couldn't shake the feeling that something more was lurking beneath the surface, something I hadn't yet seen. Maybe this was the end, or maybe it was just the beginning of a new, twisted chapter in this already broken story. By the time morning arrived, I was exhausted, both physically and mentally. But I knew that I couldn't ignore what was coming. Vanessa was asking for a meeting. She was going to explain everything. But was I ready to hear it? Did I even want to? I dragged myself out of bed and went through the motions of getting dressed, my mind already miles ahead. I wasn't sure where we were supposed to meet, but when I checked my phone, there was another message waiting for me. "I'm at the coffee shop near our old place. I'll be waiting. Please, just come." I stared at the message for a moment longer than I should have. The coffee shop near our old place. It was the one we used to go to every Saturday morning before everything started to fall apart. It was where we had shared so many quiet mornings, talking about our hopes, our dreams, and our future. I hadn't been there in months. The idea of going back felt wrong. It felt like stepping into a memory that was too painful to relive. I got into my car and drove, the familiar streets now feeling foreign. I couldn't focus on the road. My mind kept drifting back to Vanessa. What had she been hiding? What was the truth she hadn't been able to tell me? As I pulled into the parking lot of the coffee shop, a chill ran through me. The place looked the same, but it felt like a ghost of what it once was. I parked the car, my hands trembling on the wheel. When I walked into the coffee shop, it was like stepping into a time capsule. The smell of fresh coffee beans, the soft hum of conversation, the quiet clink of cups, it was all so familiar. Yet, it felt wrong. I felt out of place, like I was intruding on something that no longer belonged to me. Vanessa was sitting at a corner table, her back to the window, just like she always used to. She hadn't noticed me yet, and I took a moment to just watch her. She was staring down at her coffee cup, her fingers nervously tracing the rim. She looked so small. She looked like the woman I used to love, the woman I had trusted with everything. But there was something different in her posture, something off about the way she was sitting. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I could feel it. She glanced up as I approached, and her eyes widened with surprise, as though she hadn't expected me to actually show up. I didn't say anything at first. I couldn't. My throat felt dry, and the words I wanted to say were stuck, tangled up with the questions I needed answers to. She stood up slowly, her hands shaking slightly. She didn't come over to hug me, didn't offer the kind of greeting I had been hoping for. Instead, she just looked at me, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Regret? Guilt? Or was it fear? "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She sounded like she had been rehearsing her words, but when they finally came out, they felt like they were slipping from her, just out of reach. I sat down across from her, but the distance between us felt like miles. I didn't know how to start. I didn't know if I should let her speak first or if I should demand answers. The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. Finally, she spoke again, her voice cracking slightly. "I owe you an explanation, but I don't even know where to start." I leaned forward, my fists clenched on the table. "Start with the truth. Start with why you've been lying to me for months. Start with why you've been sneaking around behind my back. Why didn't you tell me, Vanessa? Why didn't you just tell me?" She flinched at my words, her eyes filling with tears. I could see how hard this was for her, but that didn't matter. I wasn't there for her excuses. I wasn't there for her pity. I was there for the truth. "I didn't know how," she whispered. "I didn't know how to tell you that everything had changed. I didn't know how to tell you that I wasn't the person you thought I was anymore." Her words hit me like a slap. Everything had changed. She wasn't the person I thought she was. The woman I had spent years building my life with had been hiding something, had been someone else all along. It felt like the foundation beneath me had crumbled, and all that was left was dust. "Then who are you?" I asked, my voice colder than I meant it to be. "Who have you been all this time?" She looked away, her gaze dropping to the table, as if she couldn't meet my eyes anymore. "I don't know," she said quietly. "I don't know who I am anymore. But I know what I did. I know it was wrong." I waited for her to continue, but the silence dragged on. She wasn't looking at me now, her hands trembling as she twisted the napkin in front of her. I could feel the weight of everything she wasn't saying, everything she was holding back. She wasn't ready to confess, not fully. But I wasn't going to sit here and wait for her to piece together the words. "Vanessa," I said, my voice hard, "I'm done with the games. I need to know what's been going on. I need to know about David. I need to know who's been pulling the strings." Her eyes snapped back to mine at the mention of David's name. There was a flicker of something in her eyes, something I couldn't interpret. Was it fear? Guilt? Or was it something else entirely? "I never meant for any of this to happen," she began, but her voice faltered again. "David, he's not just a coworker. He's been more than that. He's been trying to get me to leave you for months now." I felt my heart drop. "What? You've been seeing him behind my back, and you're just now telling me?" "I didn't want to. I didn't want to hurt you. But he's been manipulating me, controlling me in ways I didn't realize at first. And I couldn't see it. I was too caught up in the lies." Everything inside me seemed to freeze. The betrayal, the manipulation, it was all more than I could process in a single moment. But one thing stood out from everything she said. You were going to leave me for him? Vanessa looked down again, tears welling in her eyes. I don't know. I don't know what I was doing. But I was lost. I was so lost. I didn't know how to respond to that. I didn't know how to process the words she had just said. Was this the truth I had been looking for? Or was it just another lie, another excuse to justify her actions? But as I sat there, staring at the woman who had once been my everything, I realized something. The answers I had been seeking weren't here. Not with her. Not with David. They were out there, waiting for me to find them. And I wasn't done yet. I was getting closer, but I needed to know the whole truth. No more games, no more secrets. I wasn't walking away until I had everything. The air between Vanessa and I hung heavy, thick with everything that had gone unsaid. Her confession had left a pit in my stomach, but there was still so much more to uncover. So many unanswered questions swirled in my mind. David, manipulation, lies. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I was standing on the edge of something much bigger than I had originally thought. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about a much deeper conspiracy, something that reached beyond Vanessa's infidelity and into the heart of what I had been blind to for months. I stared at her, my mind racing, trying to piece together everything she had just admitted. I could see the tears in her eyes, the regret, but there was a hardened look beneath that vulnerability. She wasn't the innocent woman I thought she was. She had been hiding far more than I ever could have imagined. So, I began slowly, keeping my voice steady. You're telling me that David has been manipulating you this whole time. He's been pulling the strings, getting inside your head, and you just let him? You let him do this to us? Vanessa flinched at the accusation, but there was no denying the truth in it. It wasn't like that at first, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't see it. I thought he was just a friend, someone who understood me better than anyone else. But then it got worse. He started making me feel like I wasn't enough, that you weren't enough. He played on my insecurities, my fears, and I got lost. I felt my anger surge, but I couldn't let it consume me. I had to stay in control. If I lost it now, if I let my rage dictate my actions, I'd never get to the bottom of this. And the messages, I continued, my voice hardening. The ones I kept getting from that unknown number. Was that you too? Were you part of this game? She looked away, unable to meet my gaze. Her silence spoke volumes. It confirmed what I already suspected. There was more to this than just her affair. She had been involved in something deeper, something darker. I didn't send those messages, she said finally, her voice trembling. I swear, I don't know who is sending them. But I think someone else knows everything. Someone who's been watching us. Watching me. My pulse quickened. Someone else. I repeated, feeling the blood drain from my face. Who? Who else is involved in this? Vanessa's eyes flickered with fear, and for the first time, I saw the weight of her own terror. I think it's someone from David's past. Someone who's been pulling the strings even before I met him. Someone who knew about us from the very beginning. I could feel the pieces starting to click together, but they didn't form a clear picture. It was all too complicated, too layered. This is insane, I muttered, more to myself than to her. Who are these people? Why are they doing this? Vanessa took a shaky breath. I don't know. But David wasn't just after me. He was after you, too. He's been setting this all up, manipulating us both to get to something. Something I didn't understand until now. I leaned in, my mind racing. What is it, Vanessa? What does he want? What's the endgame here? She shook her head, her expression filled with helplessness. I don't know. I don't know what he's really after. But I feel like I've been trapped in this web for so long. I can't even see the way out anymore. I sat back in my chair, my mind spinning. Everything I thought I knew was falling apart. It wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just some misguided emotional connection. It was part of a much larger, far more dangerous game, and I had no idea how deep it went. Suddenly, everything felt like a trap. I had been living in a lie, and now the truth was slipping through my fingers like sand. I couldn't trust Vanessa, not fully. I couldn't trust anyone. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized how much danger we were all in. Whoever was behind this had been playing us from the very start, and I had no idea how far they were willing to go to keep the game going. I needed to find out who was really pulling the strings. I needed to know who was watching us, who was watching me. But more than that, I needed to know why. What was the ultimate goal? What did David want from me, from us? And why had I been kept in the dark for so long? The truth was out there, hidden somewhere in the web of lies and deception, and I was determined to uncover it, no matter the cost. I need you to tell me everything, I said, my voice steely. I need to know who David really is, and who else is involved in this. You can't hide anything from me now, Vanessa. Not anymore. Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time, there was something different about the way she looked at me. It wasn't just guilt or regret. It was fear. Fear of what I might do next. Fear of the consequences of everything she had kept hidden. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could say anything, her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, her face going pale. I followed her gaze, my stomach tightening. Something was off. The message was from a number I didn't recognize. It read, "You're too close to the truth. Don't go any further." My heart skipped a beat. Who was sending these messages? And how did they know what we were talking about? Vanessa looked at me, her expression now one of sheer panic. "We're being watched, aren't we?" she whispered. "They're always watching." I didn't think it would go this far. I didn't respond. My thoughts were too jumbled, too wild to make sense of. But one thing was clear. I was no longer just chasing after the truth. I was running straight into the heart of something much darker, something much more dangerous than I had ever imagined. And there was no way out. Not unless I played their game. I wasn't going to back down. I couldn't. But as I stood up, ready to confront whatever came next, I couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. Whoever was pulling the strings had just made their next move, and I was about to walk right into it. I stood there in the coffee shop, the words from the anonymous message hanging in the air like a threat I couldn't escape. "You're too close to the truth. Don't go any further." But despite the fear gnawing at me, there was something else rising in me now, determination. I wasn't going to let anyone control my life, not anymore. No one was going to keep me in the dark, no matter how deep their game ran. I had already lost too much, my trust, my peace of mind, and the woman I had once loved. But I wasn't about to lose myself. I turned back to Vanessa, who was still sitting at the table, her face pale, her hands shaking. She had been caught in this web of manipulation, and while she had made her mistakes, I couldn't help but see the fear in her eyes. This wasn't the person I had known before. This was someone who had been pushed to the edge, someone who had been a pawn in a much larger scheme. She wasn't completely to blame, but I knew I couldn't fix this on my own. We both had to face the consequences of our actions and confront the truth, together. "Vanessa," I said, my voice softer this time. "You've been hurt too, but you can't keep running from this. We need to end it. Together." She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of relief and terror. For a moment, I thought she was going to back away again, to pull away from the chaos that was about to unfold. But then, slowly, she nodded. Her lips quivered as she spoke. "I don't know where this goes, but I'll do whatever it takes to make things right, to fix what's broken between us." The words didn't come easy, but they were real. And in that moment, I realized that the truth wasn't just about uncovering the lies. It was about facing them, accepting them, and learning to move forward from there. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to be quick, but we had a chance to rebuild something, even if it was just from the ashes. I left the coffee shop with Vanessa beside me. I knew the path ahead wouldn't be simple. We had a long road ahead of us, a road filled with uncertainty, but also possibility. We had been broken, but not beyond repair. And in the months that followed, we slowly pieced together the fragments of what we had lost. We sought counseling, we learned to communicate again, and slowly, we began to trust each other. As for David, he disappeared from our lives just as quickly as he had appeared. We never heard from him again, and for that, I was grateful. But I wasn't naive enough to think that everything would be easy from there. We had both been changed by the events that had transpired. And maybe that was a good thing. Maybe we both needed to learn what it meant to be truly honest with each other. We rebuilt, not just our relationship, but our trust. It took time, patience, and a willingness to face the hardest truths. But in the end, we came out stronger. I learned that true love isn't about perfection. It's about fighting for each other, even when everything seems broken. And Vanessa, despite her mistakes, showed me that she was willing to do the same. 1 year later, we sat together on the porch of our home, the sun setting in the distance, casting a warm glow over everything. The memories of the past still lingered, but they no longer held power over us. The fear, the doubt, The darkness had faded, and in its place, there was peace. A peace we had fought for, a peace we had earned. We didn't have all the answers, but we had each other, and that was enough. And for the first time in a long time, I truly believed that everything would be okay. The truth had set us free.